From scorpion to eagle to phoenix. This is Suit in Boot. My name is Tshai Wright, and we're here again breaking the chains of silence. We're standing up in truth and transformation and breaking out of trauma. I'm here again with Jianny Adamo, a licensed mental health counselor, and she's here with us again to talk about betrayal trauma and the effects of love. Gianni, thank you for being here.
Hi, Tashai.
How
I'm
are
so
you?
happy to be here. I am doing well. I'm enjoying our beautiful South Florida weather.
Absolutely wonderful fall
hmm
season that we have going here. And
hmm
this is our season,
Yes, this is
our
the
wonderful
fall. Yep, this is our time.
fall season. Now, Gianni, the last time you were here, we talked about fearless love and we talked about betrayal trauma. Can you let everyone know and remind everyone what betrayal trauma is, what relationship trauma is?
Absolutely. So, what we discussed last is that anyone, such as a child, a partner, a spouse, who depends on a system or another person, and then basically the rug gets pulled out from underneath them, the reality gets turned upside down. There's a betrayal. A lot of people end up with what we call betrayal trauma or love trauma or relational trauma. So, there's multiple labels or languages to describe the same thing. And at that point, what happens with an individual who goes through betrayal trauma is that they start questioning their reality. They lose their sense of self, let's
Mm,
say. Their self worth also gets diminished. And there's a lot of questioning of reality and questioning of themselves. So you end up being in a very unstable, like quicksand kind of a world. So you went from what you thought was,
safety, stability to chaos, so to
exactly.
speak,
That's a
right?
good way of saying that.
And the last time we were here, I was telling you about my story, and you did make a statement that kind of stuck with me. I was loyal to a system that was not loyal to me, right? Can
hmm
you elaborate on how betrayal trauma and those type of effects, how, elaborate on the system that
hmm
was loyal, I was loyal to, that wasn't loyal
Yeah.
to me?
So when I address the system, we're talking about the family system. So this is behaviors and maybe even the silence that we inherited from one generation to the next.
Mm,
And we are expected to continue the silence, to continue to put up with things that are actually toxic and abusive to our mental health.
absolutely. So, can you tell me what are the effects? What that does to the body, what that does to the mind when we're trying to grapple or wrestle with a system that's not loyal to us and, our brain it's telling us one thing while the system is telling us something else.
Yeah, it divides you. It absolutely divides you. And then what happens is there are many people who will have physical ailments, somatic disorders, and yet they can't pinpoint where the source of this is, the etiology, where this is coming from, because it's all part of an emotional trauma that is now manifesting in the body. So that would mean people like with migraines, people who have chronic pain or sleep disorders or other manifestations of chronic issues with the body. And there's like no real source of this. It's coming from most likely an emotional trauma, which is usually linked to a betrayal trauma, a relational trauma, or attachment trauma.
So now tell me, so can the effects of like a betrayal trauma or relationship trauma cause, for example, like cancer systems in the body or different things to affect the cells and so on and so forth? Can that be some cause of that relationship trauma?
The way we look at it is that we're all born, every single family has certain vulnerabilities that we pass on through the genes and the DNA. So, based on your environment, then it will kind of determine whether that gene will get turned on. So, for those of us who end up with a lot of neglect or abuse, then the environment is quite fertile for vulnerabilities to be turned on.
Mm.
So, that's part of what happens.
Does it also affect how we handle people in relationships? How does the betrayal trauma react and what are some of the things that we do once we're going through betrayal trauma? How do we lead that in another relationship? Can you tell us how
Mhm.
that affects our future relationships? past relationships, current relationships.
Yeah, so what you're asking is, if you have betrayal trauma, how am I continuing this and instead of breaking the cycle, correct? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Absolutely. Yes.
I think the first way we continue these traumatic experiences is we are in denial. That's
Oh
a
yeah. Oh
fact.
yeah. That is the first step, right? Like we're talking about stages of grief, really and truly.
Mhm.
That's one of the stages of grief that
Yeah.
we're going denial, denial,
Yes.
denial. Like this is not happening.
Yes. And that's because it's so much easier to say, no, this does not exist, because then
Hmm.
that means I don't have to put energy into trying to fix something. We can just pretend that it does not exist. We'll just pretend that the uncle's behaviors are not toxic and we're just going to laugh it off. But yet the uncle has been fondling and molesting all these children
Right.
or whatever the situation is.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's easier just to say it does not exist. We'll just keep denying. So that's how we keep passing this on to from one generation to the next. Keep denying, no problem. Just keep in the denial system. You'll keep it passing on to generations to come.
Absolutely. We're like burying our head in the sand
Hmm.
essentially. And these bad behaviors
Hmm.
are happening in the family unit, in the extended family unit,
Hmm.
and nothing is being done. And so, what are some of the effects that it has on the family through the generations of not talking about it, silencing the bad behavior, not dealing with it? What are some of the effects as we go on through generational cycles and everything like that?
Well, I think the major effect is we keep passing it on from one generation to the next. Besides denial, I think the other thing we do need to mention is a lot of times the victims are silenced by the family, and a lot of times the victims are the women, and they're not allowed to speak out. And especially in the generations prior, we were like properties of the man. So, like,
Absolutely.
then you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're speaking against the people who actually are supporting you. So there was no way to speak out. So that's something obviously that we're breaking through these days.
Mhm.
We are to speak out and to get the support and help that we can from the people that are out there to support us. I think silence, which is what your podcast is about, breaking the silence, is an important message, because with the silence is how we keep perpetuating this from one generation to the next. Without the silence and breaking the silence is how we break these patterns, is how we break the cycle. And we move into freedom. We
Absolutely.
move into freedom. We're allowed to be who we're supposed to be without carrying this weight of shame, because that's what we're
Hmm.
carrying around, huge baggage of shame.
When you say that, I picture like Atlas, Atlas, the Greek god, just bringing the weight of the
Hmm.
world on their shoulders. Because when I was going through my steps and my betrayal trauma and experiencing everything, it just felt like the weight was on my shoulders. And if I solved one problem, there'd be 10 other problems coming through,
Hmm.
emotional problems, that is. And I could not figure out why until I started to think about the past things, everything tied in for me, as I said on the last show, that, I had this thing happen to me in childhood where I discovered I had a brother that was silenced throughout the years. And then finally it came back where my high school sweetheart, my husband of 15 years or so, has a child, and that was dormant. Those
Hmm.
feelings were dormant. And when, my ex-husband came and told me about that child, everything started to be
Come back up.
rehashed and come back up. And I didn't think it was an issue. I did not know it was a problem
Exactly.
before.
So you said when your brother showed up, you weren't able to express your feelings and what you felt. Do you remember what your feelings were when this young boy was brought to your house?
I just remember feeling replaced, really. And I remember not being able to ask my dad about it because one, he wasn't present. He was in Florida already. He had gone on before us. Two, even if he was in Jamaica at the time, I still would not be able to speak to him about it because
He was
our
an
family,
adult and you're a
absolutely. And
child.
I'm a child.
Yes.
Go and sit down, speak when you're spoken to. This is adult business. This is not children's business. Essentially, I mean, whether it was intentional or not, the effects are there no matter what.
Mhm.
and not being able to express them, it's just horrific.
Yeah.
Because what do I do now when it comes back up in my adult life? It's definitely there, and it just held dormant for such a long time. And what can we do? And for me, like creating this space right here, this podcast, breaking the silence and trying to open up about our traumas. I mean, it has been so enlightening. It is in a weight off of my shoulder. I
Mhm.
no longer feel like I'm atlas. I don't feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders, and I'm doing the self care. What are some of the things? What are some of the signs, really and truly, that trauma is still running your life? It's still running the show.
Okay. So some of the signs would be that you're still repeating patterns that are ineffective. So you keep running into the same kind of guys, you keep dating the same kind of guys, even if they look differently, the
Hmm.
behaviors at the end of the day are the same. So getting trapped in a cycle that you're like, why is this showing up still in my life? Another thing would be feeling stuck. So you have goals, you have dreams, but yet you don't seem to get there. Another thing would be like stuck in that self-sabotage.
So, what about love trauma would cause us to be stuck when we have these goals and these dreams? Are you saying that the trauma is keeping us frozen and not allowing us to move forward?
Yes, there's parts of us that are frozen and there's a lot of fear. So there's not only shame involved, but there's so much fear and
Mm,
panic. So anytime you want to move out of your comfort zone,
hmm.
you're like overwhelmed by all this
Absolutely.
fear.
Anxiety is
Yeah.
kicking in.
And then there's a part of you that is maybe we'll call the little lost child, the person who got traumatized
Hmm.
at whatever age that was. And that little boy or that little girl is still in there, like waiting for someone to like rescue them. And they're like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm like, I'm staying
Like, I'm
here.
waiting. I'm
Yeah,
waiting
I'm
for
waiting.
Superman
Yes,
or, somebody to come and
exactly.
rescue me.
Yeah,
And
they're
nobody's
frozen
coming.
because
Nobody's
nobody
coming.
knows he's there or she's
Right.
there, stuck in this frozen.
And stuck
Yeah.
within themselves and
Yes.
within ourselves. And we're just kind of crying out in like this closed space and nobody's hearing us.
That's correct.
So how do we get the little boy or the little girl within inside of us to be heard? What are some of the ways that we can be heard?
And that is a really good question because it starts with us and stopping the self abandonment. What happens is that we were abandoned and neglected in childhood,
Mhm.
but then we grow up continuing that pattern of abandoning and neglecting ourselves. So the first thing you need to do is listen to yourself. When I was going through my love trauma and betrayal trauma healing, I learned to actually do like the positive self-talk. So many of us don't talk very nicely to ourselves.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah.
That's a first step. We need to give ourselves grace and be kind to ourselves because it starts with us, right?
Mhm.
Because if we're not nice and kind to ourselves, nobody else is going to be nice and
Exactly.
kind to us.
So one of the things that I started to do was at that time, my nieces, I have 4 gorgeous little nieces. Well, actually they're adults now pretty much. But back then they were babies and they were toddlers. And you talk to babies like in that little baby talk.
Hmm.
So as I was going through my healing, I would start talking to myself in that same loving, cute voice up. The tones are high. Hi, good
Mm.
morning, beautiful baby
Ah,
girl. Good morning. How are you? It's a beautiful day out there. And why would I do that? Because when you're dealing with trauma, you wake up full of anxiety.
oh,
You're full of
yes.
anxiety, irritability. You're unsure, uncertain. You're already ready for a fight and
Absolutely.
you don't even know what the heck is going on. And you're not
You
even
know,
off the bed yet.
I definitely feel that. Some mornings I'll wake up and I dread looking at my email because I think
Yes.
there's going to be an
All this
attack.
negative
There's going
stuff.
to be a lot of negative coming. So I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so anxious. I just want to stay under the covers a little bit longer and feel safe.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you
Mhm.
start doing your positive self talk and you're like, good morning, gorgeous. How are you today? It's going to be
Mhm.
a beautiful day. Start like with the positive affirmation, giving
Absolutely.
yourself something positive to look forward to versus like what the traumatized side of your brain is telling you, which is like,
Mm.
ready for an attack. We're full of anxiety. I'm irritable.
Absolutely.
I don't even know why I'm getting up. Life is not even worth
I
it.
know.
You know, like,
Like, yes, let me stay under the covers, man. Like,
yeah.
no way, I'm staying under the covers. Absolutely.
Okay. So, in addition to the positive self talk, journaling was another
Mm,
way
and
of.
that's a great thing. And I decided to get some, some journals, the Suit
Mhm.
and Boot journal, because that's a great way to put your thoughts
Yeah.
and feelings down without having them being judged by another person, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of times we want to speak out and speak up for ourselves, but we don't have that courage because we've been silenced for such a
Mhm.
long time. And I think journaling is a great way to express that so that you don't feel like you're being attacked.
Exactly.
It's your private thoughts and you just
Yes.
close it back up and put it back down. And if you're ready to release it and open it, then you can do that. But I agree. I mean, journaling helped me so much throughout my betrayal trauma cycle, still going through that, because, it's still life. We're still lifing, but writing down these thoughts because I had a lot of intrusive thoughts, the
Mhm.
anxiety again. Journaling is a great way. So,
Yes.
that's one of the ways, but,
Actually, this brings me back to also one of the other destructive things that happen in the families and in a destructive relationship. It's also
mhm.
the gaslighting that goes on. That
Yes,
definitely is what creates so much of our fears of speaking out and breaking silence. We
absolutely.
forgot to
Yes.
mention that last week. I
Yeah.
think that should have been brought up last week. The gaslighting,
hmm
that really sets a huge root of fear of speaking out.
And can you tell and explain what gaslighting is for some of us that don't know? Because we use these terms a lot, and sometimes we don't even understand what the terms are. So, can you
Mhm.
just elaborate on what gaslighting is?
Sure. The gaslighting becomes ultimately a brainwashing of your reality. So you found out that your partner is cheating. And so they're going to be like, no, I did not. And you have all these facts and you're
hmm
calling out the, nope. They'll create stories around the facts. They'll create alibis that don't exist.
To make you seem like you're making up a narrative or you're
Exactly.
crazy,
Yeah.
actually.
Then they pin back. This is the problem. Not only do they deny it, then they're pinning it back and shifting the blame on you,
Mm,
whatever their bad actions are. So that whatever the heck they did, it was your fault for speaking out, for being controlling, for being emotional, for asking questions, for having boundaries.
Oh,
Because
yes,
everything turns against you, no matter what
absolutely.
they. Well, the problem is they cannot hold themselves accountable.
No
Therefore,
way.
then everything gets
It's you.
projected
You've
over to you.
changed. The problem is you. Oh, you're not being the doormat,
Mhm.
so to speak, that, they were so accustomed to. So they definitely gaslight you and try to seem like you're crazy and so on and so forth. Once you start standing up and, for your boundaries and standing up for yourself, right?
Mhm.
Now, let me ask you, how do we tell the difference between boundaries and walls that are built from fear? Because, we're saying boundaries are a way for us to, kind of create like a strong force for us and everything. So, how do we know the difference between, we're laying out a boundary and we're just building up a wall as a
Mhm.
self protection for
Okay.
ourselves?
So these would be boundaries, right? My arms being in front of me. That's a boundary.
Okay.
Okay. People are going to hit there and they're not going to go any further.
Mm-hmm.
So when we say with boundaries is the more space you give yourself with your boundaries, the more breathing space you have for yourself, for your creativity, for your thinking, for your processing your emotions instead of like somebody's on top of you and you're puking everything on top of somebody else. Like,
Right.
you don't need that. You need your
Right.
boundaries to be out here and they're gates. So they open. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gates. They open, yet they allow people in and out as well. Okay. So, and the more space you give, the more space you have for yourself. You want that to process. You need creative energy. You need time alone. Okay. So the difference between the wall and the boundary is A, there are gates. People can come in and out. And as you can see, depending on who it is, we can bring the boundary in. If they're an intimate partner, you want them on top of you,
Mm-hmm.
right here, hug, chest to chest, skin to
Skin to
skin.
skin,
That's where you
close.
want your lover and your
Mm-hmm.
partner. And not all the time, but many
Right.
times. And then
Absolutely.
there are people who are your acquaintances. They're probably going to be out here at least 3 feet away from you.
Right. So
So
basically you're
they're
saying
mobile,
boundaries are not they're not rigid.
fixed.
They're not fixed. They can transform, they can shift depending on the
Mhm.
situation. right? And so would you say if your boundaries are too rigid, would you, for someone out there that doesn't know the difference between building up the wall of fear versus a boundary, would you say maybe they need to loosen up and kind of reassess how things are affecting them?
Okay, so it is normal that in the beginning, when you are going through your healing, that you're going to be extremely sensitive, and like everything becomes like very like, I don't know about that. And it's okay. It's part of the healing process. See, in the beginning, you had no boundaries and people were using your body, using you emotionally, using you all your assets, your services,
Mm.
your intellectual assets, and you asked nothing of them. You just gave it to them for
For
free,
free.
expecting that this is coming back to you in mutual respect. But
Right.
there was no mutual respect. None. None
Just a
whatsoever.
one-sided taking.
Yes. So in the beginning, yes, we are all very sensitive and we actually have to say goodbye to people that had once been very close to us, and
Mhm.
that hurts. But after you go through your healing, you will be able to invite many of those people back because your boundaries are now properly assessed. And they, if they love you, will start to learn to respect your new boundaries. If they don't, they're
Absolutely.
going to keep going, and that's okay.
Mm.
And that was never meant to be beyond that. The other thing about boundaries is it defines your preferences, what you allow, what you don't allow, what you like, what you dislike. All of that's here in this space. You have a sense of yourself and you have a better definition of your life and what you want in it. So it's okay. We can make that very flexible. And in the beginning, yeah, we're going to be very like, I need to reassess everything right now. So everybody's out.
Mhm.
Everybody's out right now. Except for the 3 or 4 people I could trust.
Right, absolutely. And I wanna ask you, so when I was going through my steps, my betrayal and so on, at first there were like a lot of feelings, just so much feelings that were just washing over me and encompassing. And then at another time, I just felt nothing. There's like a bunch of numbness. Now,
Mhm.
is that like a typical type of transformation, different stages? Can you help me with that assessment? Or because I kind of felt crazy. I was like, all right, all of a sudden I'm like experiencing all these feelings and now I feel nothing or feel little. So, and I just thought I was crazy.
No, I think that's also all pretty natural, part of the healing journey. And we say that healing journey is like it's cyclical. You're going around, but you're hopefully moving out of this nightmare down here,
Hmm.
whatever that was. But you're still going around, which means you're going to revisit the same topics multiple times, maybe in a year. And maybe 2 years later, you'll revisit that same topic again, but from
Hmm.
a totally different perspective. And I get a lot of clients who are like, but I thought I healed that already. I'm like, it's okay.
I feel like I'm going
Yes.
backwards, right?
It's like
Like, oh my God, I don't want to feel this again because I've already dealt with this.
it's just part of the layering. And now you're back, but we're looking at it from a different perspective.
Mm,
And
and it
it's healthier that way.
absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, once you've gone through your boundaries, because even with my ex husband, we're like the best of friends now because I was so angry with him at some moments. Like even last year, I couldn't even stand to see his
Hmm.
face. Now it's like he used to be my best friend.
Hmm.
Now it's like I can see pieces of my best friend and I'm not harboring all that anger towards him because I've reassessed and I see him a little bit as a victim of that same system
Yes.
that I was a
Yes.
part of.
Yes.
And I think he's also a victim. So I definitely view the situation very differently. I view him differently now. And this is not about blaming another person. It's about my healing and where that healing is taking me. And for the longest time, when I was, kind of like seeing him in a different light or a better light, I put a lot of blame on myself because I'm like, you're such an idiot. This man cheated on you, gotta, whatever it is, and brought up all this childhood trauma. But once I assessed it and I got through my healing, it was more so me understanding why I reacted the way that I
Hmm.
reacted. And my healing and my emotional journey is on me, it's not on him. And I have
Correct.
to take accountability
Yes.
for that for myself.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I created this space because it's not about blame, it's
Mhm.
about your healing journey.
That's right. And I know this is not the most popular view, but at the end of your journey and your healing, you actually end up thanking the adversary.
Absolutely.
because that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
These people who actually inflict pain upon us,
Mm-hmm.
they were our adversary, and we are worthy of these
Absolutely.
adversaries because they support our healing journey while we are deciding to stay open and healing. We can stay bitter or we become better.
Absolutely. I
But we
love that, bitter or better.
That's
That is
right.
so amazing. I
We
love
were
that.
getting better, and when we
Absolutely.
do, as we get better, we realize they entered our lives as a gift, even though it was extremely painful and there was a lot of suffering. We
Mm-hmm.
still see that as a gift from them to us.
Absolutely. And, I am trying in my next relationship or my next journey that, as you said earlier, we date the same type of people, right? We look for similar guys and so on and so forth. And part of my healing, not picking
The
the
same type.
wounded.
Exactly.
I heard this terminology. I feel like my ex-husband has what I heard the terminology called a mother wound,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I don't need to pick another partner that has a similar mother wound, right? That is not my role. I'm not my partner's parent,
That's right.
and it's not my job to parent him.
Mhm.
It's not my job to tell him what's morally correct, how he should be as a husband. It's not my role. That's, what your parents are supposed to be showing you and putting those kind of guidelines in you. And once I understood that, I let a lot of that pain or, a lot of that grief, I let that go
Yes.
because I was holding on to a lot of that. I thought he was my responsibility
Yeah.
to be, you know, this better person, but,
Mhm.
I'm not his mom. And that I think that took a long time for me to accept that.
Letting go of this is the thing is that becomes a role for us. The role is caretaker and
Mhm.
protector. We as children of parent who are either narcissistic or they were addicts or abusive of whatever kind, we end up becoming the caretaker and the protector of self and of the
Absolutely.
other little kids, children in the
Mhm.
household or siblings, and sometimes even a sick parent.
Yes.
And then we continue into adulthood, attracting the injured,
Oh,
the
yeah, the wounded
wounded.
bird. You're like, I'm like dating the wounded bird because I'm a fixer.
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
become fixers.
Yeah, we become the fixers.
And that took so much for me. I can't fix a
Mhm.
person, right? You have to heal yourself.
Yeah.
And the word fix, it means that you're broken, right?
Mhm.
And yes, we are emotionally broken, but we're still whole in a way that we're not to be discarded,
Yes,
right?
that's,
We're still good. We're not spoiled milk.
that's right.
And so that's
And even
kind of
spoiled milk turns into cheese
so
or
true,
butter
right?
or
We can
something.
definitely get repurposed
Yes.
for
There you go. I
for,
like that.
for something else. And so once we're on this one path, it's just like the boundaries. It's not rigid. It can move,
It's malleable.
it's malleable.
Mhm.
So it took a while for me to kind of learn that and kind of to like let go of that rigid state that I was in and saying that I was in control of fixing everything and taking care of everything
Mhm.
because again, not my role. And I let go of a job that it wasn't even my job
Mhm.
to begin with because I wasn't his parent.
Exactly. So, but the question is, if you're letting go of the caretaker and the problem solver, fixer, and the protector roles with an
Mhm.
S, then who do we become? What is our new identity? And that is the work that many people do, like in therapy or in coaching. Like, who am I? Because then you're
Mm,
lost. Like, who
absolutely.
am I if I'm not the fixer, the caretaker, problem solver? Like who the heck
Identity
am I?
loss.
So it's a
Absolutely.
whole identity
I
loss, which
suffered
is
that, after I realized that, I'm not his mom or,
Mhm.
I'm not responsible for fixing these things, that it took me such a difficult road that, who am I
Mhm.
if I'm not playing this role? Because him and I grew up together. We met when we were 15 years old and a sophomore in high school, right?
Mhm.
So I took on that role since then. And he grew up in my family. My family kind of raised him, in a way. It was,
Oh, so you guys grew up like
we
siblings.
grew up like siblings. So he grew up in the same system, so to speak,
Mm.
as I grew up in. So it was like, okay, here I am dating a sibling because we grew up in a similar system. right? And then he had all these issues with mom, who he only spent about 7 years of his life living in the same household as mom. So he has a gaping mother wound,
Mhm.
so to speak, right? And the interesting thing is, mom was in the middle of us because she moved into the house while we were married.
Oh,
And
wow. His
yeah,
mom?
his mom moved
So then
in
she shows up and it's in your
and
marriage.
it's in our
Oh
marriage.
my gosh.
And then she's trying to reclaim her
Of
son.
course. My
Well,
God.
he's already an adult here. And so it was just a lot of chaos
Yeah.
in that household, the house that him and I bought together. She's
Mhm.
there. She lived with us for 3 years, and within that time frame, this is where the cheating happened, and he
Wow.
stepped out
Oh, no
while mommy
way.
was living in the household. And so after I moved out,
Chaos stepped in.
absolutely. So mom, attacked me instead of, having him take responsibility. And so she had to move out when I was there trying to make it work. But once the divorce was filed and everything, mommy moved back in 3 days after I moved out, after the divorce. So
Reclaiming her son.
reclaiming her son. And it was just, even if we were going to try to work on things or fix things, she was
There.
a wall. She was a barrier. She was a boundary in a good way, right? So she kind of staked her claim there. And so, in your book, From Love Trauma to Fearless Love, what does reclaiming your right to love look like?
The other side of the journey of healing.
Mm,
At this point, you're full of life again. You know who you are. You know what you want. Your boundaries are clear. You know
mm,
what you allow and don't allow into your life. And now you are more in a position of alignment, of being a more true, authentic self. And
mm,
then energetically, you're calling forth all of that that belongs to you, your birthright. Because
mm,
we might have inherited some chaotic things, but we also have some birthrights, which are beautiful, which is part of living in abundance and love. So for me, it was shifting over from the scarcity mindset
mm.
to attracting more love and more abundance daily in my life and more peace in my life and
Absolutely.
really designing a life worth living. So
Right.
ultimately, that's what we come to. And then some of us decide to stay single for a long time. And
Mhm.
some people call forth their mate, their next partner quickly. It doesn't matter. It's your choice. It's what you want. And it's all part of, I feel like also there's a lot of destiny too involved.
Yes,
So
absolutely. I'm a
I'm
big
like,
believer in that.
so I think, no matter how much we want to like call forth the partner, sometimes we have to wait until it's the right
It's the
timing.
right timing.
Hmm.
Because for me now, I'm not looking, just I'm just trying to reclaim me
Hmm.
and find the best version of me,
Hmm.
right? And I think a lot of us, we've lost ourselves so much into a system, or,
Hmm.
whatever the adults or whomever has left for us. And we never get out of that mentally, physically. We're just stuck in that cycle, and we're working towards that goal and working towards what the other people want for us.
Exactly.
And we're not working towards what we want.
Yeah, we're hiding behind masks
Hmm.
and people pleasing.
Absolutely. And it's time, where we're standing up and speaking up and breaking out of the trauma and the silence, we are removing a lot of the masks.
Oh, we are.
We are revealing our authentic self. And as you stated before, the best version of ourselves is the only way we can combat that
Hmm.
trauma and, reclaim ourselves. Because if we're not ourselves, then who are we?
Hmm.
you know? So I've been writing a lot of letters to my inner child. I've been journaling, and I've been saying a lot of things to my parents that I have not been able to say, but I haven't told them. I've
No,
been
but you could do
writing
it.
it down in a journal. And this is why I believe in journaling. I have said a lot of things that I wanted to say, and a lot of things that I can't say, and a lot of things that I shouldn't say to
Yeah.
them, because I'm not looking to hurt their feelings. I'm not looking to blame them. I'm just looking to take myself back, stand up in my truth,
Mhm.
and just transform to the best version of myself, right?
Mhm.
And so I think it's safe to write down those thoughts.
It's cathartic.
It's very cathartic,
Mhm.
very, very much
And it's
so.
freeing, it's liberating.
Absolutely. And, no one has to be upset and hurt, and I don't have to hold that guilt. And so that's a great way that I've been releasing a lot of this trauma. And I think it definitely will work for people out there. And journaling is a great way to, kind of take yourself back. So, for someone that's ready to break the change this week, what are three things that we can start doing today to start breaking the chains and start to heal?
Three things that you can start doing today. You mentioned one, which is the journaling.
Journaling,
Absolutely
always a
recommend it.
big advocate of the journaling.
The other thing is reading,
Mhm.
whether you're reading or doing the audiobook or watching videos on YouTube, but educating yourself in this
Education.
topic for the trauma is that entered your life. And maybe for some people is they had a borderline parent, a mom who was borderline and they're very abusive and violent at home. So then reading books on adult child of borderline
Mhm.
mom, that would be probably a great way to start to so that you can start anchoring what the heck happened to you in childhood and what is, what now. But first we need to figure out where did we come from? What was
Mhm.
all this stuff that happened to me? Because then we have the understanding to
Absolutely.
keep moving forward. Without understanding our history, then we're still blind out there, like
Mhm.
pinning, the what do you call it, the tail on the donkey.
Absolutely, blindly.
So it's
And that's
important.
why we learn history, because we don't wanna create do the things of the past. That's why
Yes.
we learn history all the time.
So the journaling, the reading and researching and understanding. And then the third is your body, which I talked about last week. You've got to include your body. So working out, exercising, dance,
Mhm.
yoga, breathing,
Walking on the
somatic
beach,
things.
golfing, different type of activities that, affect the brain and so on and so forth, because everything is all connected. The mind and the body is all connected all in one. The more you're silenced, it's like you're being abused. It's
Hmm.
a silent abuse.
Hmm.
Yeah, we
Emotional
definitely
abuses.
emotional
Hmm.
abuse is silencing. So
Hmm.
we definitely need to be able to break out of that. And I do thank you for being here. And you were talking the last time before we go about that you do not have an alarm because you don't want to wake up in that chaos. We were
You,
talking
you
about the
already heard how I'm
anxiety.
waking up.
Absolutely. Oh, that alarm would be adding to it. So,
Out of
and
here.
and I think that's a great way to kind of get the mind and the body together and break out of trauma, break out of the silence.
Yeah.
And I love these tools and these great ways that we can release ourselves. They're not, it doesn't have to be expensive. A walk on the beach is
Hmm.
free,
Exactly.
So there are
Or hike in
different
the
ways.
mountains somewhere else.
Absolutely. Hike in the mountains, go to the park, whatever it is, go on a boat, something. So these are all ways that we can break out of the trauma, break out of the silence, and stand up in the truth and the transformation. Gianni, thank you again for being here. And thank you for talking to us about betrayal trauma, fearless love. And Gianni has a book. It's on Amazon. It's available. She's also a coach here. And so I thank you so much for being here. And thank you for joining me in Suits and Boots. And Gianni, do you have any
Anyone who wishes to find me, you can find me at fearlesslove.net, and I offer a free 15 minutes to your audience. So
thank you.
check it out and schedule yourself for your free 15-minute consultation with me.
And thank you so much, Gianni, for that. You can check out Gianni at fearlesslove.com. And thank you for tuning into Suits and Boots, standing up in truth and transformation, breaking out of trauma. My name is Tshai Wright. And from Scorpion to Eagle to the Phoenix, still we rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Chit Chat. Hey, what's
Cheers. Thank you.
up?